For the vineyards in this region, we have what's called vine mealybug, and that has become pest number one. I would recommend Sutera to other growers, and I would say that Sutera has become the backbone of a program in the fight against the vine mealybug.
Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with American Vineyard Magazine, reporting to you from CAPCA in Anaheim this year. I'm here with one of the speakers today, Chen. Really exciting to be here with you in person. You're from the North Coast. He's a new viticulture farm advisor for the UC Cooperative Extension, based in the North Coast. So he's really taking care of our wine grape growers up there. Wanted to introduce you to those that haven't met you yet. You started in January of this year?
Yep, January of this year, January 10th. So I haven't been here too long, but I really like the region. I really like the job so far. Just happy to meet growers.
And you've worked with a lot of other advisors, so you had this being with the UC isn't that new to you, right?
No, I've been with UC for 10 years now, doing all of my degrees up to a PhD, and then also working in extension in Oakville, Napa Valley. So this is not new to me. Neither is extension, and it's something I really love to do.
We're certainly excited to have you, and I understand you're going to be covering some of the areas that Glenn McGordy and Rhonda Smith covered in the past, so you got your work cut out for you. But we're grateful to have you here. Wanted to talk to you about what your focus is as a viticulture farm advisor. What do you see as something you're really passionate about and helping the growers move forward?
Yeah, so a lot of my work has really been focused on abiotic stress tolerance in grapes. I did a lot of work on salt-tolerant rootstocks, and that kind of work is more for, I would say, the San Joaquin Valley, where there are salt problems, salinity problems with the water, with the soil. Where I am in the North Coast, it's not that much of a concern. So I'm focusing more on things like early frost, heat waves. Extreme heat waves impact the coast a lot more than they would an inland growing region. And really just generally climate adaptive viticulture, just how can we preserve or improve the world of viticulture in California for the future.
There are a lot of pressures, coming our way, and every year there seems to be something new and different that the growers need to adapt to. And what do you see as, the vineyard of the future, like in 2030, the next 10, 20, 30 years from now? What are growers going to have to do to adapt? What kind of changes are going to happen? We've got, pests and diseases that are evolving and coming in, like the threat of spotted lanternfly and things like that. So how can growers prepare?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that a lot of growers need to think about is moving away from these cultivars that traditionally they would grow in their given regions. A great example of that is Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa Valley. It's a really adaptive grape. It has a wide range for temperature tolerance. But as we're moving into hotter, warmer climates, right, maybe drier, depends where you are, we need to think about putting in cultivars, scions especially, that are more tolerant to extreme heat waves, can be on the vine longer, or shorter if you have a shorter growing season because of frost. Moving away from these cultivars is really important, but also maintaining that heritage that was there before. So we know that places like where I'm working, the North Coast, Pinot Noir is really popular up there. And we don't want to lose Pinot Noir in the North Coast, but we do want the growers to be able to adapt to coming conditions and still grow really high-end, good quality grapes to make really good quality wine. That said, the scions aren't the only thing we need to think about. We also need to think about the rootstocks. The changing climates also change the soils. It may change the soil temperatures. It may change the biotic structure, the microbiome of the soil itself. And we really need to consider, are the rootstocks that we're using today going to be functional when maybe a new pest comes that's soil-borne? Maybe it's going to not wipe things out, but make it more difficult for growers to actually continue with a given rootstock. So we need to adapt in that way. We also need to adapt our practices, our cultural, mechanical, chemical practices. One of the things that is really catching on is reducing the amount of chemical controls that we use. And for good reason. Even with fertilization, nitrogen in excess can cause a lot of problems. We get algal blooms when there's too much nitrogen runoff. So just reducing the amount of reliance on chemicals is probably a good thing, but we also need something to replace the control that it originally provided.
Now, regarding pest and disease management, as we get more dry, as we've had more dry conditions, that can also, impact, disease or pests. Like, for example, maybe you don't have as much fungal pressure in the vineyard because there's not as much moisture, right? Mm-hmm. But then on the reverse, you've got insects that may have an easier time overwintering, more successful time overwintering in some of these milder winters we're experiencing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it really depends. The best answer for anything is it depends, but it depends on where you are, right? This year we saw in the North Coast rains in April and August, which is not unheard of, but not very good for grape growing. In those situations where it's wet during the growing season and the grapes already have accumulated some sugar, we're starting to see fungal pathogens come in, show symptoms. They were there already, right? But actually start showing symptoms. And looking at that, looking at the different conditions, we need to look at what that's gonna bring with it. Another example is glassy wing sharpshooter. It's been in California for 150 years at least, based on records. And typically, it was found in the south of Southern California. So it's wiped out Temecula's wine growing industry multiple times. But we never saw it in the north, really. I'm sure pockets here and there, but generally we wouldn't see a huge infestation of glassy wing sharpshooter. The problem is with these increasing temperatures, the changing climates, these geographic locations that used to be unsuitable for certain pests and diseases are now becoming ideal for them. So we're seeing them migrate north, and mostly north, also toward the coast, right? Because climates are warmer there too. So we're trying to understand what those microclimates in those geographic regions are going to be like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so we can at least guess, estimate, prepare for what pests and diseases are going to be really problematic in those regions that may have come from another part of California or maybe new. New in the sense of maybe we've never seen them before, or new in the sense like red blotch was, where we've seen it before but we didn't identify it until too late. So this is what we got to look at, and adjusting our expectations for the conditions of where we're growing grapes is really important, and being able to compare them to existing conditions will give us that step ahead of the pests and diseases.
Well, that definitely puts things in perspective. I think growers should consider that some pests and diseases they may see in some areas of the state, but not in theirs right now, they probably should be paying a little more attention to, because it could come your way. So something to really think about. Thank you for taking the time, Chris. Read more about these things in American Vineyard Magazine. I'm Matthew Malcolm, CaliforniaAgNet.com.